Televiziunea Română, întâlnirile JTI și Fundația Art Production vă recomandă Garantat 100%.
Salutare! Salutare tuturor! Bine v-am regăsit la Garantat 100%. Invitatul nostru din seara asta s-a născut în 1958. Este psihiatru, psiholog, cercetător în neuroștiințe. Este directorul medical al Spitalului Universitar de Psihiatrie de la Ulm, în Germania. A predat la Universitatea din Heidelberg, la Harvard și la Universitatea din Oregon. Este autorul unei cărți care s-a bucurat de un mare impact încă de la apariție. Cartea poartă titlul Demența digitală. E prezent în România la conferințele Mazars, ocazie cu care le mulțumesc organizatorilor acestui eveniment pentru mijlocirea acestei întâlniri în exclusivitate pentru postul public de televiziune. Doamnelor și domnilor, suntem onorați să-i spunem bun venit la Garantat 100% psihiatrului și psihologului, profesor dr. Manfred Spitzer. Professor Spitzer, hello, thank you for accepting our invitation.
Oh, sure. Thank you.
You are familiar, you used to work, you used to explore deep inside the human mind. So you are familiar with the abyss. So welcome deep inside the basement of the Romanian public TV. Good. Let us begin with a clear clinical definition of what dementia means.
Well, dementia is a descriptive term and simply means mental decline. It's derived from Latin and says de means down, mens means mind. So it's mental decline. It's not the same as certain diseases that cause it. So there are causes like, old age, brain cells die, or infarctions, with the blood vessels, and then you get also brain cells dead, or you get Alzheimer's, the famous form of dementia, which is basically when you have degeneration and also neurons die. But these are causes of dementia. Dementia itself is a descriptive term, and the most important thing that it's mostly forgotten is simple, and in a mountainous country you probably needn't say it, but for every decline, the higher you start, the longer it takes to get down, which is why if your brains get really up and running by using them a lot in childhood and youth, then it's really helpful, because we do know that the best protective factor of dementia is your education. The more educated you are, the later you get your dementia, and if you're really educated, you get it at 150, so you die before that.
Okay, digital dementia, the title of your book, is that a sort of a metaphor, or do you really mean that literally, clinically?
Well, I've been asked this question quite often, and in a sense, I do mean it. I don't claim I have discovered a new cause of dementia in that there's another bug or another process. But my point is a very simple one. If you don't educate your brain really high in the first 2 or 2.5 decades of life,
okay,
and then you decline, so you are up here and you decline because something happens with your brain, then you're right down there. So it is a form of mental decline that's caused by overuse of digital media in young age. Actually, the term is not my term. It was invented by Korean doctors who described, middle-aged men who played too much around with the digital stuff and who suffered from memory loss and depression and a lack of concentration and everything we know happened when you use this stuff. But I mean it not quite as the Koreans. I mean it more precise to denote the fact that if you don't get a good education at early age, and I mean a very general way of educating your mind, music, sports, theater, doing things with your hand, languages, I mean everything, okay? And the more educated your brain gets in this way, the more you are protected against early mental decline, which is dementia.
Professor, what specifically from the digital world can produce such a consistent damage on the human brain?
I think the most simple way of phrasing this is digital information technology takes away mental effort. I mean, these are tools, tools that we use to do, well, mental stuff. We want to find our way around. We used to do this with our hippocampus. Now we look at the smartphone. When we need to do calculations now. We do this with a calculator, or even also with a smartphone. And whenever you outsource mental activity to this, okay, it's like outsourcing power to a machine that does it for you. It doesn't train your muscles. And we know that, so we go to the gym and exercise our muscles because we know they waste away if we don't use them. It's the same with our brains. If we don't use them, they are not very well trained. But even more important point is this, that during brain development, the brain really needs training to get it its full potential. So when we interfere with the brain development, and digital media at young age, they interfere strongly with brain development, then we must know that this has dangers later on. And in my view, we need this technological risk assessment that just has not been done. For example, I mean, in the most prominent case is the smartphone. I mean, this thing really it's like a Swiss Army knife for the 21st century, for the information age. We carry it with ourselves. We use it, I mean, tons of times. The young people use it in South Korea 5.4 hours on average a day. And I think the Germans use it. If you ask people, they say 2 hours. If you measure it, it's 6 hours.
That's
so,
right.
so whenever you measure it, you find a huge amount of digital media use, particular smartphone use. And there's never been a risk assessment. And I think we must take this very seriously.
I'll give you an example with the muscles. That happened half an hour ago. One of my colleagues, which is one of my cameramen, said, who's this person coming to the show? And I said, he's a neuroscientist, he's a psychiatrist. He deals with digital dementia. And he said, what's that? And I said, well, the overuse of terminals, of gadgets, of virtual reality. And he said, wow, good, I'm safe. And I said, why? Because I bought for my kids an Xbox, not a PlayStation. And with the Xbox, you can do movement. You can play tennis. You can run, so you can train your muscles. Is he safe?
No. The no is on 2 counts. First, it has been shown that even regarding muscles, these virtual training stations that the VE was the first, and so there have been studies on this, and the bottom line is real exercise is better. When they had Pokemon Go last year, okay, there were immediate studies out showing that, well, the whole USA, if you do the math, will go to the moon and back 148 times next year, and the explosion of this sports, that we will all be safe and will live longer, etc., etc. Well, the studies showed that the effect of Pokemon Go on your locomotion and your increased movements lasts for about 5 weeks, and then it's faded away to zero again, and then you drive your car and get at the Pokemons and you shoot them from your car, which is why you get more accidents. And you had more pedestrian accidents because people not looking but only looking at their phones, etc. And there has been research on this to quite an extent. So it didn't do any good, it did bad. And the second count is that the more you spend time with the PlayStation, well, the less you spend time reading books, playing music, being outside, and this is the weakest argument, but it's the same time the strongest, because if the digital time spending kind of lets everything else become unimportant, well, then our kids no longer spend time in a way that's good for them. And this is my point.
We'll get to the kids. The essence of digital dementia are the new universal languages and gadgets, or the advance of technology in itself?
Well, sure. I carry this thing.
Yeah.
And I spend a lot of time at a computer. In fact, as a scientist, as a doctor, there's no way to do your job without computers.
Right.
I mean, that's for sure. But again, for me, even this, I don't play with this at all. And I hardly do anything else but getting email or answering the phone or doing a phone call. And not so often, I must say. And I often go offline because this is distraction. In fact, it has been shown only recently. If I just put this here, your and my IQ goes down. Even if it's not ringing, because we constantly have, no, not check it now, okay? Yes. So you have to have a little mental effort not to have a look at it. And this mental effort is measurable, and it's a way, so, and it was shown that so your thought processes goes down, even IQ tests give you a lower IQ. Oh. So we know that this is not good for our mental capability. And I'm saying this, yes, as a tool, it's great. But again, is it that we should give our kids these tools to spend their leisure time? I think this is the dangerous thing, and we must not do this.
Which is the precise impact on the human mind as long as we live, literally, in a world of screens? Screens, screens, even you and I, yes. We are now on a screen for our viewers.
Yes. Well, there are many effects. It just depends upon, of course, what you're doing. The general effect is that we all know, well, on a screen, information is fleeting. So, and it could be, well, somebody just telling us rubbish on the screen. Mm-hmm. It might be good. So if you ask Californian students, for example, what do you want for your course materials? Screens, reading from a screen, or reading from a book? 85% say we want to read from a book, because then we are sure, hey, somebody has spent a lot of effort into this, then it was edited, it was copy edited, then somebody invested money to print it. Mm-hmm. When we have it on a screen, well, it may just any nut person putting anything on the screen. And this is proven, and so we take this much more seriously. And if you learn from a book, we actually learn more. And they're quite right. It has been shown in studies that if you read from a screen, you tend to skim the text and you click, etc. And if you read from a book, you do what's now called deep reading. That is, you read and you think about it. It used to be called reading, you know. Now yes. people click and don't think much. Now, so you have to have a new word for reading and thinking, which is called deep reading. I just call it reading, but reading and clicking is not so good, not as good as just reading. And books, you can do just reading, which is why they are better. It's as simple as that.
I know that this is a vast topic, but
yes,
what happens to children in the digital new world?
Well, that depends upon the age. The recent study from Germany in about 7,000 children done by pediatricians has found that if mothers, when they are nursing their one-year-old baby, look at their smartphone at the same time, there will be more sleeping problems with the baby, because the baby wants the attention of the mother. And if the mother doesn't turn to the baby she's nursing, the baby will notice the mother is not attending to me. So the
will
baby,
you take that as a serious study?
This is a very serious study. So again, doctors found a correlation between mothers using their smartphone and mothers saying we have a problem with the sleep of our babies. Okay? Then mothers will give this out for their 2 to 4 year olds in Germany, 70%, more than half an hour a day. And the more they do this, the more there are language developmental problems. Because we also know from very good science that young kids, they cannot learn any language from this. Once you know a bit of language, if you are 5 or 6 or 7, you can pick up other English, for example, a bit from this, but only a bit. But to learn your mother tongue, this is really not good. You don't learn anything regarding your mother tongue from this. So we have language developmental problems the more 2 to 3, 4 year olds use this. With the 7 to 9 year olds, you get more attention problems when they use this a lot, because this basically is a distraction. And when you are young, the one thing you need to learn, and this is not just brain development, you need to learn it. It's focusing. You focus on this, and you don't want to be distracted by this and this and this and this. And when you often deal with this, or even do a lot of gaming, where here comes somebody and here comes the other enemy to blow you off, etc. So you need in order to do the games well. Yes, you train your attention in the direction of more attention disorder because you want to focus not on this, but on every
the whole picture.
The whole picture, so you get more attention problems with this, and that's been shown. I mean, it's not my opinion. It has been shown in the scientific literature. And when people are about 13, the more they use this, the more they feel they are no longer in control of their lives because this has taken over. You get 200 messages saying, I'm eating gummy bears, or what do you think? Okay, I'm on the toilet, what do you think? And all these non-messages. And
it goes with us in the toilet as well?
Oh, yes. Yeah. And you have to respond within 3 minutes, otherwise you get the next, hey, what's wrong with you? You have to answer. And this is a big distraction, and even young people notice this. A big German study, they studied 8 to 12-year-old kids. About 50% said this is a distraction, and about 25% said, this is really terrible. I can no longer concentrate because of this. So even if asking 8 to 12-year-olds, they complain basically that this is not so good for their lives.
Sometimes the old model of education is teaching under fear.
Okay, yes.
In school and at home as well.
Yes.
Is that better than digital literacy?
No, I think teaching with fear, there's a good reason. In fact, it has been researched in the last 10 years a lot. So yes, I mean, we have a system in our brain basically that lets us avoid everything that's bad for us. So you put your hand on a hot plate, you don't have to train yourself not to do this. You do it once, ouch, and that was that. Okay? And we have a system that works about like this. Hey, this was important, and if you do this again, you will be maybe damage yourself. So you must avoid this. And for this type of learning, we even have this system. But this system has a downside. Whatever you learn under the impression of fear or danger, you learn, but you attach the fear and the danger mark, so to speak, to it. So once you learn something with fear, you reactivate the fear, and we have shown this, other groups have shown this as well, when you recall the content. Now we do know what fear does to the brain operation mode. It makes us really focused, and it makes us not think of many other things. I mean, if you are really endangered by the saber-toothed tiger, you don't lean back and start to be creative. Those who did are no longer with us, okay? So fear is something that makes you very focused, very accurate, but not creative. But you know, we teach our kids all our wisdom in order to make them creative problem solvers of all the many problems they will have in 20 years from now. And if we take this idea seriously, we must not use fear in school, because then we have, in teaching with fear, we have already ruined their creativity 20 years from now, when they will use their acquired knowledge. So we must not do this.
What will you answer to a parent watching us right now and saying something like this? I don't use fear in the education of my kid. I use pressure.
Well, being a father of 6, I do know that, you know, sometimes you have, come on, try again, try a little more. Particularly when it comes to musical instruments, for example. But you know, I have a friend who really pressured his son to do the violin, until the son vomited onto the violin. And then the family realized it probably is not the best for the kid, and so they stopped this. And I mean, you must not let it go that far. So, but you know, little downs, you can kind of carry through. But if the kid really doesn't like it, he or she doesn't like it. And with my kids, some picked up many instruments, some didn't pick up instruments, they did other things. So as long as you give them a lot of things, they will do a lot of things, and this is good for child development.
One might say, hearing you, one might say that you are worse than a conservative or a fierce traditionalist. The conspiracy theory fans, any of the religious fundamentalists, can easily use your saying and turn them into their own discourse. I presume you thought about that.
Well, I didn't even well, I did think about that, and I realized that this is possible because I saw this happening. Well, I think you have to realize that when I write my books, I back everything I'm saying up with scientific literature. And I must say, the opposite side, saying, well, it's all bright and it's all good, show me the studies. That's my response to them. And in fact, since I deal with these things, you know, as a scientist, the most interesting thing for what you're doing is, what's the counter evidence? You always want to know the counter evidence. Yep. In fact, from a philosophy of science perspective, since Karl Popper, falsification is everything. So I want to know, most importantly as a scientist, am I wrong? Okay? And I'm most interested in studies that say I'm wrong. And I looked at some of them, or quite a few of those who said I'm wrong. And whenever I looked, it didn't really hold up to a critical evaluation of what it was about. For example, there are studies showing that, yeah, if you learn geography with a computer or watch a movie, and then you do a test in geography, well, you are better if you learn geography with a computer than if you watched a video, okay? That doesn't show anything about learning with computers. It shows you that if you learn, well, with or without it, but you have these studies, and then they conclude computers are great for learning. But of course, this doesn't follow from the study. And there is so much bad science out there claiming, hey, computers are good. And if you look at the good studies, and I'm saying this in full consciousness of what I'm saying here, if you look at the good studies, there's not a single one showing that computers in schools do any good. And there are a lot of studies showing they harm kids' learning. This is important to know. Teachers must know, parents should know, and politicians should know. In Germany, we are about to spend 5 billion euros to have computers in every classroom and the internet in every classroom. This is a recipe for making German kids less bright and learn less, by about 20% at least.
We see this as civilization, as progress.
Well, this is sold to us as civilization, as progress. I mean, you must not forget that the richest companies on earth are digital companies. And they want to sell their stuff. They want to turn you into the product that they can sell. They want to hook you on Facebook or on Twitter and on YouTube. So the world watches 1 billion hours of YouTube a day. And the YouTube recommendation algorithm that recommends the next video, which happens at about 80% of the time all YouTube videos are used. That algorithm, it's known to generate recommendations that are a slightly bit more radical than the original one. And then again, more radical. So you start with vegetarian, you end up with vegan. Yes. You start with jogging, you end up with ultra marathon. Right. And in politics, you start with the middle and then you end up to the far left and far right. So this was a front page newscast in the New York Times at March 8th. And the line basically said, YouTube, the great radicalizer. And this must be taken seriously because, again, I mean, the business model of these big companies is that they use machines that work like brains. Their computers don't work like your tablet or like a PC, but they simulate brains. So these computers can learn for themselves, for example, how to play Go and then outperform the world master. Okay? So their machines basically show that it's possible with the proper input to get the proper output, and even better than a human being would. But I mean, let's think about this. Kids have brains and they get programmed just as their big computers. So whatever we give to kids to digest mentally will change their brains accordingly. So if we give 1 billion hours of more radical videos than the people choose by themselves to billions of people, this is going to radicalize billions of people. And this is the price we pay for YouTube being for nothing. Because they want to sell us ads, which is why they want to stay us in front of the screen, which is why they put ever more radical content on it. So as long as we're not paying anything for YouTube, we'll get more radical videos. Is this a good thing? I doubt it.
Professor Spitzer, I will come back to, we had a conversation over here before your arrival.
Yes.
And the same cameraman said, come on, don't talk to me like that. Don't sell me nonsense. How can I stop my kids watching the computer, using the smartphone, being digitally civilized? Because if I stop that, my kids will be like persons with disability. They will not be in the contemporary society. They will not be part of the people living in civilized conditions as everybody does. How will you answer that?
Oh, there are many answers. First, you should think of the risks and side effects of this technology. We haven't talked about this. It's not just learning detriment, not just more attention problems, a lower grade in school. It is also depression. The more hours American girls spend with this, the more likely they are suicidal. And over the past 7 years, the number of suicides in the US among girls has doubled. So this is a serious concern. In Great Britain, they have been able to show that girls who spend with this more than 3 hours a day are more than twice as likely to be depressed when they're 18. A large study showed in adolescents, the more they use this, the less empathy they have for their parents and their peers. We know that this causes diabetes, elevated blood pressure. This causes
Diabetes.
Yes, I tell you the reason why. Because this causes less sleep, between 1 to 2 hours, depending upon how much you use it over the day, and particularly depending upon how much you use it before you go to bed, because this has blue light, and the blue light suppresses your melatonin, which is a sleep hormone, so your sleep is suppressed. And when you have less sleep chronically, you get a pre-diabetic metabolism. So less sleep is a risk factor for diabetes. So if you have, if I sleep a little less, that doesn't matter, because even if I now get diabetes, that doesn't matter much, because it takes decades to develop the strokes and everything bad that comes from diabetes. But if you get this at 10 or 15, you have all the time that you need to develop all the risks and side effects, and you get them. That's my point. But I'm not done. This has replaced alcohol as the #1 cause of traffic accidents. You must know this. Okay, and
that's right. Yeah.
And then we have falsity spreads faster than the truth on this medium. A recent paper showed this. So we have all these downsides. On top of, people get fatter because they move less, because they sit and do all this with the thing. And if you add this all up, tobacco is tiny. We haven't talked about addiction. This causes not only smartphone addiction, it also causes alcohol and nicotine addiction. Shown. If you add this all up, this is really the worst killer that we have. And so, in discussing this with many people, I have had this argument. Would you really give a thing that's so dangerous as this to your kid when the kid's 8 or 10 or 12, and to your cameraman, I would say...
Or 3 or 4 or 6.
Or 3 or 4 or 6. It's even worse at that age. So to your cameraman, I would say, you know what, if you don't give this out, or give it out as a present, you don't have to forbid it every night from next day onward. So, Bill Gates has said, this is nothing for my 13-year-old daughter. The chief of Apple has said, this is nothing for my nephew who is in school, because it ruins school performance. The former chief of Facebook said, this is meant to be causing addiction, in particular when you use Facebook on it. So we have all these statements. And in fact, recently, Apple investors, they said, they wrote a letter to Apple saying, hey, this could cause addiction, and if 4 billion people, these are the number of the smartphone users on the globe, sue Apple for compensation, Apple is going to be broken. That's our money. So, it's not me, saying all this, and I'm not fear-mongering, and I'm not conservative. I'm just talking seriously about the medical literature under the risks and side effects of these things. And I think we have to take it seriously.
I'll give you a practical example, and I'll be the devil's advocate right now. Let us think of the fact that one of our viewers would say something like this. I caught you, Professor Spitzer. You are a conservative and a traditionalist because you have 6 kids. You're more likely to be conservative and traditionalist since you have 6 kids.
Well, you know, when we spent time in America, and then we had 5 kids, and when we said, oh, you know, Spitzer, we have 5 kids, but you know, neither dumb nor fundamentally religious. We had to add that soon. We learned to add that when we introduced ourselves. 5 kids, but neither dumb nor fundamentally religious. So I think you can't infer my worldviews from the number of my kids. I mean, in my particular case, definitely not. So no, I'm not a conservative. I'm concerned. I'm really concerned. I mean, for example, 4 weeks ago in Germany, they discussed in the German parliament a new law. And the law is saying that you must not use this to film dying traffic victims.
Yep.
Because this has happened in Germany, and the film turned up on
Happened all over the
YouTube
world,
or whatever. Yes. So, I mean, how morally decayed is that? That we have to have a law
Right.
for obviously being the most unempathic behavior or display the most non-empathic behavior that I can
Right.
think of. That is, if the person dies, not going there helping or whatever, but filming the guy and
Right.
put this on video. This is just showing how
You got the
bad it
impression-
is.
You got the sensation, the clear sensation, that if you don't film it, that is not real.
Well, we have other people who stepped over a person lying in front of a money machine and back, and the 5th cared about the man. I mean, these are examples of complete lack of empathy. In fact, I'm running a hospital, acute mental hospital. So I talk to police because they sometimes bring patients, etc. So I talk to them. What has changed in the recent decades? They say, no, we had always fist fights among people. I mean, a bit of alcohol, a bit youngish people, and they fight, But there's one difference. Now, even if somebody's laying completely motionless, they still kick into the face of the poor person. It used to be that they stopped. So this complete lack of empathy, that's new. And in fact, there are large-scale studies from the US showing we have a lack of empathy, particularly in the last 10 years. We have an increased narcissism. Me, it's the iPod, the iPhone. I mean, I got a photo camera when I was 12 from my father, and I liked taking photographs. It wouldn't have occurred to me to do a selfie, which is the most done photo by young people on the globe. It's a selfie. I never in my life did a selfie when I was under 18, and later on, well, maybe with my friend or whatever.
You could be answered something like this: you are an enemy of self-esteem.
No, in fact, I am all for self-esteem, because self-esteem is one of the most important things we can teach to our kids. But if you look at this and you find all the time that the party is better at the party where you are not, that the grass is greener on the other side, all the time, then you think, oh, I'm missing out again, and I'm missing out again. So you're trying to improve your life but using this, but you learn you miss out all the time. And so how do you learn self-esteem this way? You don't. And if you can't, do soccer or play basketball or if you play an instrument or play basketball or you create something, with your hands, with a clay, or you draw something. Hey, I have done this. But how can you, with this, be proud of something? Hey, I beat 1 million space invaders. I don't think you get much pride out of this.
One of the most desired conditions of a contemporary modern human being is multitasking. Well, you say that essentially humans cannot be multitasking beings. Mm-hmm. Well, that will not bring you any sympathy with some of my friends.
Oh, well, tell your friends. Do they read 2 books at any one time? No. Because if they try, they will realize you're much faster if you read this one first and this one second.
As a matter of fact, I do have friends reading in parallel. 1 book for 1 hour and a different book for 1 more hour or something like that.
This is okay. This is not multitasking. Mm-hmm. Multitasking is trying to do to try to process two semantic streams, let's call it this way, at any one given time. So leading two conversations, you know? Or, I mean,
I'll give you an example. I watch TV, I talk on the phone, and I eat at the same time. Is this multitasking?
Well, the eating part is not. The trouble with the eating part is you will not notice when you get satiated, so you will eat more.
That's so true.
That's the troubling part. But it's the multitasking part is being on the phone and watching TV. And your partner on the phone will notice that if the TV is really a good program and that your attention will be caught by that, then you will, hey, what did you say? I was just a bit absent-minded. So this is going to happen. So if you phone with your partner, switch off the TV, the partner will realize this is not you, this is you watching TV. And this is, you send a signal, this conversation is not so important to me, and don't send these signals that ruins your, I'm a psychiatrist, that will wreak havoc to your relation. But let me make the point very clear. People have looked at this. So if you really try to do several things at once, and why does this come up with digitalization? The reason is simple. We have screens like this, so you can have a document here, an email there, and another thing there, and then your smartphone with an SMS there. So, and you could try to process everything at once. If you do, your performance just goes way down. That's the one thing. You are not as good speaking to 3 people at the same time than, you know, doing sequentially. That's shown. By the way, even women can't. Sometimes it's claimed women can, but women can't. They can. Men can't, women can't, nobody can. This is one thing. And the other thing is, some people say, well, we have to train to get at that.
Right.
And evolution will possibly bring us in 100,000 years to be able to multitask it. Well, first of all, evolution is really slow. So if you argue evolutionary, well, but then we'll have, you know, collateral damage for the next 100,000 years. And this is crazy. But they actually have shown that people who multitask a lot, if you do tests on mental capabilities that you need to use when you multitask, for example, concentrate on this and have this out, okay? Or switch tasks. That's also something that we do a lot of with multitasking.
Switching tasks,
so these capabilities, you would think, well, people who do a lot of multitasking, they are good at that, compared to non-multitaskers. But they have found in a very high-power paper, it's just the opposite. So people who multitask a lot do everything worse that you need for multitasking, which is basically another way of saying if you multitask a lot, you train yourself to have an attention deficit disorder, which is not what you want to do.
How do you react when some of your fellow psychiatrists, neuroscientists, who say that the digital world is a normal phenomenon in the process of evolution and that this is just a stage of a more complex process that comprises even interconnection in between the human mind and the computer and the machine, and that this is a new perspective upon a new way of understanding the very essence of the human being? How will you answer to that?
Well, we had in the last 200 years of our history, we had a lot of technological breakthroughs. And I know some people were skeptical about it. We know when the railroad came out, well, if we go more than 20 kilometers per hour, you'll drop dead, or some people have said that. Turned out, no, we didn't drop dead. Yes, sure, okay. But that doesn't say anything, because we also had X-rays. And when they were invented in 1895 in Berlin, they X-rayed each other on parties. And in fact, there were X-ray machines in shoe stores until the 1970s, and in particular in kids' shoe stores. So
why?
Well, because you could put your foot in there and you would see your bones, and then you could it was to see if the shoe fits. But I mean, you could just ask, does the shoe fit? And then that's how to see how a shoe fits. But these machines were so funny for the kids that they wanted to go there and have a look at their bones, etc. I mean, this is the most X-ray intensive way of using radiology is kind of having moving images, okay? So I don't know how many dead people we had because of I mean, decades of use of these machines in the children's departments of shoe stores. Okay, so we do have technological breakthroughs that eventually turn out to be not so good. Take lead. Lead is a great paint, shiny white, but it's bad for the IQ of the kids who live in these rooms that have lead paint on the wall, because they will go with this, and then their blood levels of lead will be elevated. So they banned lead paint in children's rooms. They banned lead in gasoline, because that also got into the brains of the children, and you can actually correlate the lead in the blood with the IQ, and it goes down the more lead's in the blood of the kids. That's all been done. So we do have new technologies that are detrimental. Or take asbestos. I mean, how do we treat houses with asbestos? Do we say, well, let's not go too often into them? No, we tear the houses down because we say this is unhealthy to stay in there, so we need to tear them down. Now I'm saying all we need to do is to take this more seriously and to look at the harmful aspects. I don't want to forbid this, no. I just want to make us more aware of the possible dangers, risks and side effects, and I want that we particularly make sure that our kids won't be harmed, because the younger you are using this, the more harm you will suffer. And this is what parents should know, teachers should know, kindergartners should know. So we basically need to take this seriously.
Will you suggest, I don't know, will you suggest an age limit to be digitally literate, for example?
Well, you know what? In Germany, you can operate a hang glider on your own when you're 14, which is certainly more complicated than a car. And in the car, you need to be 18. Why is that? Because we think to operate 100 horsepower, you need some responsibility, okay? And the 14-year-old probably doesn't have that. Well, in order to use this, I mean, this is the biggest red light district on Earth. It's the biggest crime scene on Earth.
It is.
In order to use this, you need to be morally quite developed. And the 14-year-old, we already have decided in terms of traffic, isn't. So probably we need to decide, is there a starting age with this? With cars, we decided on 18. That's reasonable. Maybe we'll decide, I mean, if you ask me, I would say 18 is a good age to start with this. Really.
I mean,
I know, I am out of this world.
Do you imagine what lots of people do say right now when hearing
this
you?
This man is crazy.
Yeah.
Yes, I know. But you know what? When cars came up, nobody had any laws, and we invented laws. And in fact, we did err on the younger side of the age, because if you look at car accidents, a year after you do your license, 18-year-olds have more accidents than 9-year-olds in the year after that. And it goes down until about 23 or 24. And then your brain, we know the brain's developed by about 25. I mean, your social brain and the higher level centers. So, and this again, this interferes with brain development. So if you take this seriously, you should consider this. You know, I don't want to forbid anything. My point is, take it seriously, and we must not let the health and the education of our next generation, that's all we have in terms of our prosperity, our future, at the mercy of the richest companies on earth who want to make more money by hooking our kids onto this and let them use this and then sell their time for the advertising that's the money that drives all that business. No, we don't want that. And so from a brain research and a psychiatric perspective, and even an educational perspective, we should be more concerned.
Professor Spitzer, you are the guests of a cultural TV show produced and aired by a public TV, according to a specific law, which governs the functioning of the public television. Its mission is to inform, to educate, and to entertain. Well, can public television, regardless of the country, so can public television educate anymore? I mean, can we still talk about education through a television channel anymore?
Oh, sure we can. Well, we have to know that until the kid is about 2 or 3 years old, the kid should not be exposed to any screen, because screens are taking away real experience, and the kid needs real experience. When the kids get older, I mean, there is educational programming like Sesame Street is probably the world's most known program, and you know, a quarter of an hour a week probably doesn't harm, and so if you use that, but as I say this, I know probably people watching will say, well, quarter of an hour a week? I mean, this is now the biggest babysitter on earth, and the TV set is also a babysitter. But all parents in the world should know that this is not a good babysitter. This is a harmful, I mean, in the Middle Ages, they had little cloth pads soaked in opiates and alcohol, and they put this on the tongue of babies, and the babies were so sweet, and they were all so quiet.
Let me tell you, it's still working.
It's hope not.
It's still working.
But you know, this is addictive, and the younger the brain, the more addictive it is, and this is not good for brain development, just as alcohol and opiates are. So we no longer give out alcohol and opioids, or we don't recommend it, even for 10-year-olds not, but not for babies, sure not, and not for kindergarten kinders. And this we give out, I mean, all the time. I think in 20 years from now, people will look back and will say, they did what? They gave this to babies, or to preschoolers, or to first graders? Were these people crazy? They knew from machine learning input, I mean, garbage in, garbage out, and garbage will form in there, because this is what machine learning does. It sucks up the information from the input and makes it into matter. Our brains make mind into matter, and then they function the way the experience was. So is this the proper experience? No. I mean, for a kid who needs to learn how to touch it, and this is a glass and water is, oh, it's interesting. I mean, if you have this and you swipe across a surface that has no sensory feedback, and you do the same movement all the time, no matter what's on there, there is no sensory motor training. But higher level brain centers, they get their input from sensory or motor centers. So if you don't have this training, how can thought get more interesting up here? So the more finger play you do in kindergarten, the better you are at math at 20. But if you dump down your fingers doing this, you won't be good at math at 20. It's like if you use Google, you learn less than using books. So if you really want our kids that they can use Google through their education, you must not use Google in school. So if you want your kid to become a programmer of this, you must not use this in kindergarten, because it will decrement the mathematical capability of the kid. It's just the other way around. Shield your kids from this, and then they will become a new Bill Gates and Steve Jobs. But if you give this out, they certainly won't.
Wow. Professor Spitzer, it has been a privilege to have you here. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation, and hopefully lots of people will listen to you.
I hope this is what I really do hope, yes.
Thank you so much, and good luck with all that you do.
Thanks.
Tuturor celor care sunt alături de Garantat 100%, mulțumim frumos pentru încredere. Ne vedem data viitoare. Noapte bună!